Fine, good afternoon to you all students. Hi students, how are you? I hope you all are fine and you all are doing well. I hope by God's grace you all are safe. So pray to God for your health, your studies, your parents and everything. Okay students. So welcome to our today's online class students. So last class I have completed till chapter 2. Okay. So the question answers for chapter 2 I'll send through your WhatsApp group. Okay students, 1 mark question, 2 mark, 3 mark, 5 mark, each question answers everything I'll send through your WhatsApp group. Okay students. So today onwards we are going to study about chapter 3, a new chapter, chapter 3. Okay. So before you are going to study about chapter 3, so just recall what are things you have studied in chapter 2. That means what are the important questions. Okay, what are the important questions you need to study in the chapter 2. Because why I am repeating this one means chapter 1, 2, 3 and 4. Chapter 1, 2, 3 and 4. 4 chapters are very small chapters. Okay, so among these first 4 chapters you can expect 2 mark questions, 1 3 mark question, 1 or 2, maybe 2 3 mark questions and 1 5 mark question. It's sure. So how many marks you can able to score? Just calculate 2 mark questions, 4 mark, 3 mark question, 6 mark, 10 mark, then 1 5 mark question, 15 mark, plus 2 1 word, 17 marks you can score from this first 4 chapter. And also very easy chapter if you are studying daily portions means, so this only first onwards I am repeating. Please study daily portions, only 3, maximum 3 questions I'll take. Okay, if you are studying daily portion mean, surely I am telling you can score 100 or 70 marks in your computer subject. Okay student, so once more I am telling what are the important questions you need to study in the second chapter because today onwards I am going to take third chapter. Okay, third chapter is a very small chapter. Okay, so second chapter, listen one more. So once more you can note it down the question answers already. I thought you might have written all the things in your notebook, isn't it students? So once more you note it down. What are the question? Define ADT. Okay, 2 mark question. Define abstraction, book inside, 2 mark question. Okay, then define constructor and selector, 3 mark question. Differentiate constructor and selector. So define constructor and selector, differentiate constructor and selector, both have the same answer. Then wishful thinking, which strategy is used to design programming technique? That is wishful thinking, 2 mark question. Book back, 2 mark question. Then define list. Okay, then define tuple, then define pair. Define list, define tuple, define pair. Understood? Then what's the difference between list and tuple? This and all 2 mark questions. Understood students? Okay, 2 mark and 3 mark over. Then 5 mark question. Come to 5 mark question. So 5 mark question first. How will you facilitate data abstraction? So for that question first itself I said you need to write the definition of ADT, abstraction, constructor and selector with till the selector diagram. First 5 mark question. Okay. Second 5 mark question, list and tuple. So starting from the definition of list, then you need to write the definition of list. Then 2 ways to access the elements in the list. The 2 ways you need to write. Then definition of pair you need to write. Draw the diagram of pair. Then definition of tuple you need to write. Then just explanation of tuple with example. Till that second detailed question. This and all book back questions. Okay. Then third detailed question. How will you access multiple item? So yesterday I took one question answer, no, multiple item with the diagram box, class, person. Yes, that question from starting to till that ending diagram. Understood? So these are the important questions. Only this much of questions are there in that chapter. Okay student. So please study thorough in this chapter. Tomorrow I have, not tomorrow, sorry students, today I have interactive session class, isn't it? So in that interactive session class I'll ask question from that chapter. So study well and come for the interactive session class. If you have any doubt means you asked in the interactive session class also. Okay students, so welcome to our today's online class students. So today we are going to study about chapter 3. Okay, so what's the title of our chapter? New chapter means scoping. Okay, scoping. This and all already has studied thorough in 11th standard itself. Are you remembering about scope? What do you mean by scope? Scope is the accessibility of variables. That means which part of the program you need to see the variable. Are you remembering? What are the types of scope you have studied? Local scope, global scope, then a function scope, variable scope, enclosed scope, etc. Same thing only you are going to study here also. Same thing. Okay. So listen, in this first three line, not for first three line, first 2 points. Okay, is the definition of scope. Very important 2-mark question. Okay, define scope. First 2 points. Very important 2-mark question. So define, listen. So what's the definition of scope? So last year we have studied what's to say the definition of scope. It refers to the visibility of variables in the program. So what are things you might have used? You might have know about, isn't it? Variables. You know about what do you mean by variables? A, B, C, etc. Then parameters. What do you mean by parameters? A equal to 5, B equal to 6. This and all we can call it parameter. And functions. What do you mean by functions? Void read data of or void display of. This and all we can call this what? Functions. Okay, so what do you mean by scope means? So it refers to the visibility. Visibility of what are things? Variables, parameters and functions. That is important point. One part of the program to another part of same program. So in a program, only one part is there. I'm asking to you. So say just remember the example of C++ program. In a C++ program, whether only one part is there? No. How many parts are there? First part means in C++ program header file. Then variable declaration. Then function. Then main of function, isn't it? So likewise we can divide the programs into 2 or 3 parts. So the scope means visibility of what are the things you have declared, variables, parameters, functions may be visible in which part of the program. Maybe it is visible inside the function alone, or it is outside the function, or only inside the main of function. So in the same program, which part of the program the particular things need to be visible. That is called what? Scope. So in simple words we can say means which part of the program you can see. That variable, which part of the program you can see or use it. Understood? This is the definition of scope. Very important. Expected 2-mark question. Okay. So for the definition of scope you need to write first 2 points. Till that use it. Understood? Okay. So normally if you are defining one variable in the program. So normally if you are defining one variable in the program mean it will come under which scope? Just a thing I tell you, you didn't give any limitations or anything. Simply you are defining one variable in the program. So normally means we can say which kind of scope? Global scope. Why? What's the meaning of global scope? Global means each and every part of the program, anywhere you can able to access, or all the parts of the program you can able to access. That is called what? Global scope. Isn't it? So once you are defining a variable inside the program, means we can see what? Global scope. But it's not useful to define the variable in global scope. Only some you have defined, for example, you have defined 5 variables. Okay. Among that, only one variable only you need to access all the parts of the program. Remaining 4 variables only you need to access inside the function. So what's the use of defining variable as a global scope, all the 5 variable? No, isn't it? So you need to limit the scope of the variable. Maybe inside the function or outside the function, etc. So for that you are giving what? Scope function. Understood? So in this slide you have studied the definition of scope and also why you are giving the scope thing. Understood? First one is variable scope. Okay. So what do you mean by variables? For example, a equal to 5. So a equal to 5 means which is the variable there? A is the variable. Isn't it? So what's the use of variable? This is very important 2-mark question. Book inside 2-mark question. Define variables. Okay. So for that you need to write the first 2 point. Okay. Define variable means you need to write first 2 point. So listen, what's the definition mean? Variables are really addresses to an object in a memory. For example, in a program you are defining 3 variables. A equal to 5, B equal to 10, C equal to 15. Okay, so immediately if you are assigning these 3 variables, so it will stored in where? In the memory. So in the memory each and everything have memory addresses. Isn't it? So these variables we can say the value of, for example, A equal to 5 means, so how you will identify this as this value as of 5? the variable a has the value 5, isn't it? So for that value 5, it will give some address. That's the a. Understood? So variables are the addresses or pointers to an object in the memory. So each and everything you are going to store in the memory, isn't it? So the variables only, it will give the addresses or references to point object in the memory. Okay, so for example a equal to 5, I said no. So on example a equal to 5, what's the meaning of a equal to 5? Value of a equal becomes 5. So if you need to assign some value, the value only we are calling as an object. Okay, so if you need to assign some object to the variable mean, you should use one symbol. Okay, in first chapter itself you have studied. So if you need to bind or assign some value to the variable means, you should use one symbol. What's the symbol? Means colon equal to. Okay, what's the symbol? Colon equal to. Okay, so that symbol we can call as a binding or mapping. Okay, listen, what's the use of the symbol mean? Are you remembering in the first chapter you have studied one question? X colon equal to 78. What's the meaning? You are binding the variable, you are binding the value 78 to the variable x. Same thing only. So what's the use of that symbol? You are binding the variable to the object. Isn't it? First chapter you have studied only one variable. For example, a colon equal to 5 means what's the meaning? You are binding the value 5 to the variable a. But at the same time, you can also able to bind multiple variables. At the same time, you can also able to bind multiple variables. That's the third one. See, multiple variables you can able to bind at the same instant, at the same time. Okay, listen, in this line, first 2 point, variables are really addresses to an object in memory when you assign a variable with colon equal to an instance of an object. These 2 points you need to write for the definition of variables. That 2 points the definition of variables. Understood? Then come to the last point. Define mapping. Very, very important question here. Define scope and define mapping. Very, very important 2-mark question. Okay. So what do you mean by mapping? Mapping means, listen, process of binding a variable name with an object. For example, that first chapter example you take x colon equal to 78. What's the meaning? The value 78 is being bind to the variable x. Same thing only. The process of binding that value to the variable is called what? Mapping. So that value only here you can call as an object. So what's the definition of mapping you say? The process of binding a variable name with an object is called what? Mapping. Okay. So which symbol is used to map the variable means colon equal to. So which symbol is used to map the variable to the object? Colon equal to. So colon equal to sign is used to programming language to map the variable and object. These 3 lines you need to write for the definition of mapping. Understood? So what are the questions you have studied? So define scope you have studied, 2-mark question. Then define variables you have studied, that first 2 points you have studied, that is 2-mark question. Then define mapping, that is another one 2-mark question. So 3 2-mark questions you have studied. These 3 2-mark questions are very, very important. Okay. Next 2-mark question you are going to study about namespaces. This is a 4th 2-mark question. Okay. So you are saying mapping. What do you mean by mapping? Binding the values into the object is called what? Mapping, isn't it? So next one is namespaces. So what do you mean by namespace? So namespace are containers. So containers, for this one best example I am telling. So take your class, 25 students are there. Okay. So 25 students means how many roll numbers will be there? 25 roll number. Isn't it? That is roll number 1 to till 25. How many names will be there? 1 to 25. 25 names is there. Just imagine you are storing all the roll numbers in a one bottle. Just a piece of paper or arranged in a table or anything. You are storing all the roll numbers in one bottle as a order, just like a column. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Like 25. So we can call the name that bottle. So that bottle only we are calling as a container. Okay. So that container, first roll number, container, bottle we can name as a roll number. Then take another one bottle. So in that bottle you are writing all the 25 names. Okay. All the 25 names, and that bottle or container you are naming as a name. So how many containers are here? 2. What are they? Roll numbers and what? Name. So 2 containers. Okay, so these two containers only we are calling as a namespaces. Now you are going to map these two things. What are the things? Roll number and name. How you will map? Roll number 1, that is number 1 is mapped to the first roll number name. Number 2 is mapped to the second roll number name. Number 3 is mapped to the third roll number name. Now understood what I mean by namespace? Now read the definition. Namespaces are the containers for mapping names of variable to object. You are mapping the names of the variables to the object. Understood? So namespace, this is another one important, very very important 2-mark question. So define namespace. What do you need to write? Namespace are the containers for mapping names of variable to object. Okay, then you can also add one more point. Okay, that last point. See, one example they have given. So dictionaries. So you might know about dictionaries. So how you will map? Dictionary contain lot of words and their meaning. For example, single word itself they have given 5 or 10 meanings. So you are reading one sentence. So for that sentence, which meaning is exactly match for that word? So that only you will take, isn't it? So that only they have given as an example. So dictionary contains lot of list of words and meanings. So the words based on your wish which is mapped. So that only you will take, isn't it? So names are mapped with the object. So always the names are to be mapped with the object using which is symbol colon equal to. Understood? Okay, up to this enough I think it's so, because you have studied 4 2-mark questions. What are the 4 2-mark questions? Once more you say. Define scope. Then define variable. Then define mapping. Define namespace. Okay, very 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 important 2-mark question. Among these 4 questions you can expect 1 question for your annual exam. Understood students? Among these 4 questions you can expect 1 2-mark question for your annual exam. So please, after completion of this session, note it down all these 2-mark questions in your notebook and study. Don't waste time. This is the precious time you got it. So at last you will think at last you can study altogether. It's very tough talk. So please now itself study. Thank you students. Remaining you can continue in the next class. Thank you.